Beauty before age.
No,
right?
ace before beauty. Ace.
I'm
before
sorry,
beauty.
ace.
You're
beauty.
the beauty. I'm the ace.
Yeah, well, I'd rather be the ace.
Well, we can make you the ace.
How are you this morning, Michael?
Well, good. I see we're not on Facebook, so hackable Jenny White is still hacked and censored. And
really, we're not on Facebook
like.
this morning. No, really.
There we go.
Well, you know, the best thing about Facebook is they can remove you. It's like the Lord giveth, and the Lord, it's like Facebook giveth and Facebook taketh away.
Well, that's the problem with all this centralized everything when you only have one or two options.
Yeah. Well, and the best thing about Facebook is if you ever want to talk to them about getting hacked and them, you know, suspending your account, there's nobody who works there.
Yeah.
Nobody works there. It's all run by AI.
Yeah.
And AI doesn't care. They don't care about whether or not your Facebook page has been up there for 20 years. It doesn't matter to them.
Yeah, they don't care.
No. So probably today I'll have to create a new Facebook page so that we can get back up on Facebook.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just
the social justice warriors are winning.
No, we're not going to let them win. But and since Mick is going to be on with us here in a second, I really, really, really want to see your t-shirt. Hey, let's see the whole t-shirt.
There we go. Arrest Fauci and Gates, our medical overlords. Our medical overlords. The most qualified people in the United States to give medical advice.
So what happens when you wear that t-shirt out someplace, Michael?
Well, when I have a whole collection of shirts like this, when I wear this out, you know, most people, they just look at it and they're like, huh. But you can tell the liberals, you can tell they're just instantly triggered. And the best part about it is they're triggered. They give you dirty looks, but they just don't have it in them to have that confrontation, to come have a talk, have a debate. You know, debate's the fulcrum of, you know, our society here is an actual debate, not just shut down censorship. But I like it. I go out. I think the saddest thing for me, Jenny, is when I see like some 20-year-old kid and they see one of my shirts, they're instantly offended, and they kind of want to do something, but they just can't bring themselves to say something. You know, they may flip me off.
Meanie.
Yeah, they may flip me off as they're like driving out of the parking lot or something. I mean, literally, it's happened. But
I'm dying.
You know, it's just freedom of speech. But I like to just let people know that, you know, not everybody agrees with the government and all these experts that are the greatest thing ever, you know, they have all ulterior motives, in my opinion.
Well, everybody, I mean, at this point has our ulterior motives. So as for t-shirts, mine this morning is "Don't make me go all Beth Dutton on you."
Hey, there we go.
I have that to say to Facebook.
Yeah.
Well,
and I'm glad we have Mick coming on today, because I have always been a person that I feel 100% responsible for my health, my child's health. I like nutrition. I like the whole process of healing, not just the allopathic medical intervention of just treatment. Because that's what it really comes down to with all, and I'm sure we'll talk about all that with Mick, but I really got activated during COVID with all the lockdowns, with just the complete medical tyranny, the complete lack of actual science, the complete lack of critical thinking. And I know Mick was at the forefront of all this too here. And I'm glad that all that happened, because I do think that it woke a lot of people up to just how bad the medical system is really been usurped and taken over.
Yeah, I think it backfired. The whole thing backfired on him. So, Mick, are you ready to come on and chat with us this morning? All right, I'm bringing you on. Good morning, Mick.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. I was listening to your conversation. I was like, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Uh-oh.
Your audio is jacked up. We cannot hear you very well.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Producer.
I'm going to pull you out for a second so the producer can fix you up, and then give me the thumbs up when you're ready to come back on. Okay. Yeah, she sounded like a Dalek.
Yeah. Well, she almost sounded like, to me, you remember back in the 80s, that little voice changer deal that you'd have? That's what it kind of sounded. Yeah. That's what it kind of sounded like.
Yeah. We were, because my oldest son does all kinds of, he makes his own music, right? He does electronic music. Yeah. And so every once in a while he'll, during dinner, he'll put on a YouTube video about one of the, guys who makes electronic music. And the guy that was on just recently that he found was literally showing you how you could program your synth to make it sound like a Dalek, and how that worked, and how it was the funniest thing. And he would go, "I want to kill you." It sounded just like it was the funniest thing. Okay, are we good now, Mick? I don't know. Maybe not yet. Okay, we're still working on it.
Bring her on and test. Well, I'll tell you funny. Not funny. This is a scary deal. Right now they have. Oh, she says she's good to go. Yeah. Well, we'll bring her on. I'll tell you this later.
Okay. All right.
Hold on. I'm going to close this window.
No.
Now it's worse.
No, it's worse even.
It's
no. Oh no. I have no idea what's. But again, if we ever try to talk about anything that the overlords don't want us to talk about, something ends up happening.
Well, you hear that all you hear that all the time on these shows, Jenny. But it's actually true. I mean, honestly, I think that it's actually true, because it always happens in the biggest, largest. They just don't want you talking about items that go against the mainstream.
Yeah, I do think that there's a lot to that. I don't like it. I've been told to keep it down a little.
Uh-oh.
I know.
What, the roosters telling you that or something?
Somebody's doing an exam online.
Oh.
So I'll just talk into my microphone like this now.
ASMR. You're going to do the ASMR podcast. That's funny. Well, Mick said she's ready.
I think we're going to try it again.
Hey.
Yes.
We're going to try it again. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do I sound like something out of Gollum or
Doctor Who?
whatever that is.
You're good.
some sort
You're
of
act-
squeaker toy going on where I'm just like, I don't know. I couldn't hear it, but
No, you were semi-frightening actually and scared me. So
I thought you were using like a AI voice changer just to throw us off.
you never know. I mean, listen, I agree with you. Who knows what's going on? Sometimes I see things that come across my screen and I just go, where did that come from? You know, I don't know. And yeah, I'm here.
I want to start off with you because you have a very interesting background, and I think people need to hear about your background. Can you give us some background on Mick?
Sure.
Give us
Yeah.
some
But,
background.
you know, I am a nurse. I worked 28 years in oncology, bone marrow transplant, clinical trials. And then I got really excited for 6 years and went on an adrenaline kick and did cardiothoracic recovery for heart surgeries. So I worked in healthcare a long time before COVID. And I did some years where I was, you know, for probably about 12 years of that, I was in some sort of management position. I was either managing outpatient infusion centers or bone marrow transplant units, or navigating where you know, connect people with resources and make sure they get their treatment on time, make sure there's no gaps in the system, they don't fall through the cracks. But my last 4 years in nursing was clinical trials phase 1.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was that a God thing or
exciting
what?
time. It was fun. Huh?
That was like a God thing.
It was a God thing. You know, that's the thing. When I was living in Alaska, because, you know, it was an overseas assignment for the military, my husband was in the Air Force. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I spent 4 years working on a business degree that I was 15 credits short of before I dropped it and got married. And then the military moved us to Alaska. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And so for about 2 or 3 months when we got to Alaska, I just kind of prayed about it. And one day I went to the University of Anchorage, Alaska. The nursing program was there. I was very interested in health and science. And like you were talking about earlier, Michael, nutrition and just bodily taking care of your own body. And I went into the administration office. They had a 4-year waiting list for the 2-year program. Wow. And I started talking to this woman and she was asking me about who I was. I'm sure I looked, you know, back then I was like, you know, very punk, very grunge, you know. And so I'm sure I looked a fright, and she just struck up a conversation with me. And she said, you need to be in nursing. And I said, well, there's a 4-year waiting list and we're only here for 4 years. And she said, no, there's no waiting list for the 4-year program. Go downstairs and apply. Wow. And I said, oh, okay. I mean, what do I know? You know, I was like, okay, sure. You know, here I go. And she said, tell them that I am the vice president of the 4-year nursing program, and tell them that you want to apply. And we got right in.
Wow.
So it was wonderful. I went from, now this is the funny part here. I'm going to tell on myself. I can't help it. When I left my business degree, I had a 1.1 grade average. When I graduated nursing, I had over a 4 point. So there you go. Wow. There's your God thing.
But you know, that's an interesting thing though, too, that you bring up, because I was similar in the sense that I tried to go to college traditionally. When I graduated high school, I tried to go, but my dad had an advertising agency and I always, you know, I kind of grew up in it and I didn't really want to do anything else. And I didn't really see like I figure I needed a degree in advertising. So I kind of went to take a couple of classes because my dad was like, well, you really do need to have a degree, because he had one. And I think I may not have had much better than you. I maybe had a 175 in 2 classes.
Yeah.
But then, when I graduated with my master's in biology, I think I had 3.9 or something like that, and then like 132 or 60, some crazy number of hours. So, I mean, which was pretty good over, the course of that. So I guess that's another thing we like to say around here is college isn't for everybody, number one, and it's not necessarily on the time schedule that everybody wants you to think it is for you.
Yeah.
And you need to figure that out for yourself. And I think you and I both are pretty good examples of that, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I tell you, I feel like the moment I went into nursing, the science of it, just the structure of it, and really the patient advocacy is what got me. People tell me all the time that that's my biggest feature is my heart, and even have had administrators in nursing who are like, you have way too much heart. It's like, okay. So, I was drawn to it, and still am. I love nursing. I love sitting down and reading research and kind of geeking out about it,
Well, so here's my question to you, because during COVID, you had your Conservative Continuum podcast show.
Not until after I left nursing.
Okay, so when did you start that?
In 2022, I left nursing in January of 2022, and I started my podcast in May of 2022, June.
Interesting. Okay, I don't know why I was thinking it was before that. Because I get older every day and time flies.
Yeah, right. Yeah. My days
amazing.
meld into each other.
So what took you out of nursing then? Because 22 was, 20 to 22 was a big year. So a big couple of years. What took you out?
Well, I'll be real blunt and honest about it. I worked through COVID, and I saw the shifts in healthcare, and the bigger shifts I saw came before COVID, when all of the DEI CRT training that was mandatory for us. In fact, the facility that I worked with was very vocal about the fact that everybody took DEI training. And so I saw those shifts happening, and I saw that there was almost like I knew there was something really wrong, but I didn't know it was DEI at the time. I just knew that there was some setting up. It was like, this is a line between those who are oppressors and those who are victims, and you could see that. So during COVID, when they started locking everybody out, I was really concerned about that, and probably used my voice more than most people, saying, you got to give people information. You've got to get them connected. We know that when you take away loved ones from their family, they do worse because they're anxious and they don't have that person of safety with them. So anyhow, the two really kind of melded together. And the reason I bring DEI into that is because while we were keeping people out, we were actually being encouraged to kneel for, George Floyd, different rallies that they had or whatever. But it was just a very odd, weird shift. So what happened was I started going to my administrators and saying, look, we're using mRNA technology not for the COVID vaccine, but for people who had relapsed from bone marrow transplant. It made them sick. We knew that. We knew it was going to ramp up their immune system. Oh, yeah. It sent them into cytokine storm. Yeah. But we were using a very small amount of messenger RNA. So it really not like what they used in the vaccine where, it replicated and replicated and replicated. This had a short replication. And so, but we knew that the B cells and the T cells would be ramped up beyond belief. That was the purpose, was to stimulate the immune system to kill the existing leukemia or myeloma, whatever had, the person's disease that they had relapsed from. So we were kicking people out. People were getting sick. We had to have emergency measures in place. They were going into cytokine storm. We were coding people. And then we were saying, well, good luck, but we sent mom to ICU, but you can't go in because COVID. And so that was very distressing. People were waiting for their loved ones in the parking garage for 16 hours in freezing cold or sweltering heat. And that was distressing to me. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted there to be a communication. And so I started speaking out about that. Listen, we need a system. I'll knock on the door, a high sign, whatever you need to give them information, tell them what's happening to their loved ones. So it's not 16 hours later and mom or dad is now in the ICU, or worst case scenario, which happened, mom or dad passed away.
Right.
And you weren't here. So I went to the powers that needed to be, and I was told that if you wanted to be the hub of communication, that's great. But the white sorority girls were no longer needed in healthcare. Those were exact words that were used to me. And that ended my career.
Wait.
So was
true story.
Well, I have a couple questions.
And I'm sorry, but I have I want everybody to understand, I love all humans. All humans are precious souls created by God. I don't care what race, what color, what political affiliation. I don't care what, if you're male, female, boy, girl. I love all humans. So that was just dramatic and traumatic. And that's when I left.
Was all that kind of regulation, all that stuff, was that just coming strictly from like the admins, or were there just like large groups of your peers that were all on board with that? Or was there a lot of people that just didn't, that were just like you, that didn't really want to speak up about it? Like, was it just completely top down, or like what was the process there in the hospital?
It was from an administrative side, and they actually said they were the most diverse, equitable, inclusive facility, and the white sorority girls weren't needed, but that was coming from administration down. My peers that I worked with, bless their hearts, I think they just kind of like, okay, it was almost, I liken it to a Stepford Wives moment.
Yes, I did too. I said that same thing.
They follow. Don't.
I want to be your friend.
Yes.
I want to be your friend.
Give me a shot. Give me the shot.
Well, one other thing before we get too far past into the rest of this, I want to know, like, at your hospital, the DEI, when it first started coming in, like that was, you said it was pre-COVID, but like how far back did you start noticing? Was it like 2017, 16, 18? Where did you notice that DEI really start rolling in at?
I would say 2010, maybe a little bit past that.
Wow.
2012. But it was very insidious. They called it culture training.
Wow.
And so you kind of had this, this person is, of this culture, you need to be respectful. Okay, who would disagree with that? Sure, I'm going to be respectful of all people. Then it went to this person identifies as a
Raccoon.
maybe a man or a woman, but you don't know if they're a man or a woman. You can't speak to them as sir or ma'am if you don't know. Don't be offensive. And then it went to, this is Jane. Jane is a white girl's name. What?
Wow.
I don't, what does that have to do with nursing? What does that have to do with health care? I'm not, it was beyond me, but it was definitely a moving of the goalpost, if you will. You get a little bit, they just kind of soft pedal you into it.
And this was kind of like in your ongoing education, like you go to seminars and things like that. They like require you to attend this training for this stuff.
Oh yeah. We used to have, and of course, nurses were also inappropriate. They used to have these red card, green card trainings, and they'd make you sit down. They'd say, your coworker comes in and, her clothing looks wrinkled or, frumpy. Do you say to her, oh, your clothing looks so wrinkled or frumpy? Or do you say to her, hello, how are you today? I mean, it was just kind of like all the training that you had in there. And you were supposed to say, is that inappropriate? Or is that appropriate? Which response is the most appropriate? So it was like conditioning.
And nobody ever stood up and went, how old are you people? How old? Mike, that's the most ridiculous bunch of crap I've ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really was I saw it, looking back on it, as a programming, a conditioning. Yeah. This is how you will speak. This is how you will interact. And, some of the times they would have us in meetings and they would say, there are no queens in here, so it was basically, some of the language that they used, it would be like a sit down, shut up, do what we tell you, act in this way. And then it became more blatant where they would have book groups that you could join. Well, the book that you'd be talking about was White Fragility. That was the book that you were supposed to read and discuss with the group in the healthcare setting, in the hospital. That's where they were having this training. It wasn't like outside at Mahogany's listening to a speaker. No, you were doing it right inside the hospital with whoever happened to be their administrators or whatever. So it was weird.
I'm not going to ask you to out the hospital, but was it one of the big hospitals with a big board?
Yeah.
Yeah. And see, I think, and I don't know if you know this particularly, but a lot of us found out during COVID how much money hospitals get from the federal government.
Oh yeah.
And you mentioned that you thought you saw the training start around 2010. Well, who was elected in 2008?
That's it.
Our first communist president, right?
Right.
So you can imagine that from 2008 to 2010, there were 2 years for those commies to get in there and to just interject all of this Marxist bullcrap so that they could start conforming people into, and if you look at the way things were, historically before 2008 and I'd say 2010 for sure, because like I said, it takes several years, for an administration to ramp up all of their, nonsense, tyrannical nonsense. But you can't say, I don't think anybody can say that since 2008, we've had what I would call normal government, a government that was conceived of, that we had, a fairly responsive government like we, had before. But I think, and I don't know why people don't put that together.
Yeah.
Well, and here's something that just gets me, and Mick, you can probably speak to this also. It's just like in education, all this DEI, SEL, all that stuff has nothing to do with academics. You send your kids to school for academics and to become, excellent in anything and everything that has to do with academics. We look at healthcare. What does DEI, SEL, all those things have to do with being a nurse and providing care to humans? I mean, it's team humanity. That's what it is. It doesn't matter what you look like. I mean, half the time these people are naked in one way or another. I mean, you go past all that and you're just treating the person, helping the person as a human, has nothing to do with any of that other stuff. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing of it is too, is that once you get into the Affordable Care Act, when that was put in, then you started seeing all these administrators, and it became so bogged down from the top. For every nurse that you had 2 or 3 administrators. And so it was more about how much money we were getting from Medicare. You can't have them in the hospital for so many days because Medicare won't pay past that. So you had to get them in, get them out. I mean, the advocacy really was the first thing that just started sliding. No longer that patient-centric care was the focus. It was more focused on, are you going to fill out this form and make sure that you don't have any hospital infections? Because if you have a hospital infection, then Medicare is not going to pay for that, or if you get readmitted after being discharged within so many days, Medicare is not going to pay for that. So that was the repeating mantra that you heard. I remember the term bean counter, the bean counter terms, just, money, 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 money. And then of course, pharmacopoeia, there was so many drugs that.
Yeah. Don't get me even started on
Yeah,
that.
no.
Right. I know. It's like a whole nother rabbit hole for a whole nother day.
Well, so let's go to let's kind of come forefront here a little bit. So you left in 2022. Was there kind of an avalanche of people leaving around that time? I mean, in the last several years, would you say there's been kind of an avalanche of people leaving nursing?
Oh, yeah. But I will be honest with you, that was happening before COVID as
Oh, really?
well.
Oh,
Yeah. There was a lot of, when I graduated nursing school in the early 90s, the average age for nursing was about 36. So, if you went up, in years, you start getting to 20 years, those people start to retire. So when I got into nursing, they said there was a nursing freeze. Well, by the time you started getting into, 2015, 2016, 2020, we were in a dire shortage before then. And a lot of that also had to do with people could see they got into nursing and it was do more with less. And there was a culture shift too, there were a lot of nurses, they wanted to work in the ICU right out of nursing school because it was a lesser patient ratio, so there was a lot of things that went on, but yeah, definitely there's a huge shift now where nurses have left. And I see that as not just from retiring, but you see a lot of nurses who were put in a position where they said, okay, take the gene therapy countermeasure or lose your job. Well,
Wow.
now I see on these chat groups, there's a ton of healthcare workers that are, injured. They can't work.
Yeah.
That makes me so sad. But what I was going to say, and partly of, my mom died about this time last year, and it was, she was diagnosed with acute leukemia and basically died within about 5 days from the day that we entered the hospital. I was absolutely shocked at the care she got and the way we were treated. And there's not a lot of concern. I'll give a really great example. We were at a OU because that was the only hospital in Oklahoma that could treat this particular type of leukemia that mom had. So they sent us to OU Medical. And so we were there, and going to the OU Medical ER is like going to, I don't know. I've never really been to like Sri Lanka or someplace, but it's a complete culture shock going to the ER. I mean, in our room, there was blood spatter all over the television. Nobody'd even bothered, to come in and fix that. The guy who was attending us was pierced. I think every orifice had some kind of piercing, and I think it made him a little irritable. May have been, feeling some infection there. I don't know, but he was a little irritable. It was like being in a third world country. And then once we got up to the floor at OU Medical, which was like the 5th floor for cancer patients, they were saying they couldn't get us onto the floor because we just don't have room. We don't have room. While I was up there, I realized that over half the floor was empty. The reason why they didn't have room is because there wasn't enough staff to take care of anybody. And I had been with my mom for like 28 hours straight, 32 hours straight, something like that. And once she got up into a room, I thought, great, I'll go home. I'll sleep in my own bed. I'll grab a shower. I'll come back. But I was warning everybody, don't leave her alone. She'll get out of her bed. So I come in the next morning, and not even the nurse on duty told me that my mom fell during the night. And
Wow.
I imagine she conked her head, and that's probably what caused the rest of her brain bleed. Somebody else, else told me that, oh, did they tell you your mom fell out of bed? I mean, all I can think about anymore is if I get sick enough to go to the hospital, I'm just going to slit my wrist, because bleeding to death, I've heard, is pretty nice. I mean,
yeah. That's the sad thing. That's the sad thing, Jenny and Michael. I hear this from so many people that, they're concerned about going to the hospital. And I've done tons of interviews with people who had their loved ones in the hospital during COVID. And they have what they call the 25 commonalities. These people were left in their own filth. They weren't helped up to the restroom. Now, a lot of that during COVID, they were like, okay, they had to keep the doors closed. We were distancing ourselves 6 feet from people. We were closing doors. We were leaving them alone by themselves. They weren't getting food. They weren't getting water. They weren't getting bathed. They weren't getting up. They didn't have anybody there to help them. I would never, ever, ever leave any of my loved ones. And I loved being a nurse. I still love nursing, but I would not leave anyone in the hospital by themselves. I don't care if they want to call the cops or not, because that's what happened as well. They called the security and had people removed out of the hospital. I'm like, what kind of crazy junk is this? Where did healthcare go?
Yeah.
When did this suddenly become the new death camps?
Wow. Well, I can tell
Sorry,
you.
but
I know it's not health care. It's health.
It's
crime.
death. It's death management. Is what it is.
Yeah.
But I can tell you firsthand, Mick. My father-in-law, he got hit pretty hard by COVID. Had to go into a hospital and a facility. He literally texted to say, they're gonna kill me, get me out of here, like now. I mean, literally texted it, and he was going down a path to where he was really going in the wrong direction. We got him out of there, luckily, and got him into the proper place. But that's how he felt himself. I mean, can you imagine being locked in a place? You're completely isolated. They're treating you in a certain way where you literally think that they're trying to kill you. I mean, that's what he said. They're trying to kill me.
Yeah. And you know, Michael, that's the sad part, is that there are other people that I spoke to where their loved ones texted them and they have it on their phone, you know, please help me, I'm going to die in here. There is one woman who came and spoke at our Medical Freedom Forum, and her husband went into the hospital and basically rescued her because she knew she was just going to die. And they told her she wanted to see her priest. They asked her, now, are you vaccinated? And she said no. And they said, oh, well, then you're going to die. I mean, these are the words that they were using to somebody who was already sick. Well, you're going to die then. And she said, well, if I'm going to die, then I want to see my priest. I want to have my last rites, because they were putting people on DNRs. They were just making them do not resuscitate. And they said, okay, we will let you. And this is an interview she did with me. We'll let you see your priest if you take remdesivir. Well, remdesivir, we know, is an antiviral that failed clinical trials for Ebola, so much so that they pulled it from the clinical trials because it was killing 53.1% of the people that they were giving it to, but yet we're still using it in COVID. And they said, if you do this, we'll do that. Well, that's coercion. So she called her husband and said, hey, you know, they're going to kill me. He went up there. There was like a 6-hour standoff with the police. He ended up, they had like legislators there. Everybody got involved. They took her home. They are now filing charges against this gentleman for taking his wife out of the hospital. True story, in Texas. They are filing charges against him for like kidnapping.
The hospital is.
Yeah, I believe it is the hospital. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So
it's ongoing right now. Crazy.
So you have been, I mean, clearly you know what you're talking about. Clearly you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you, what made you decide you wanted to have this rally for medical freedom? Because you just had it. It was on the 10th of last month. I forget, today is the 1st. Why did you decide to do this? I mean, what was COVID's gone. I mean, everything's better now, right, Mick?
Well, here's the thing. While COVID is gone, there was some interesting behind the scene contracts that were made between the Department of Defense and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, where they utilized a military framework in order to give Pfizer and all of them the ability to mass produce this countermeasure. I call it a gene therapy countermeasure because that's what it is. And so one of the ways that they did that was by instilling the emergency use authorization. Well, when they made these, connections, contracts between the Department of Defense and Pfizer and the Health and Human Service Secretary, Javier Bashara, that gave Secretary Bashara complete and total control. So that emergency use authorization does not end until December of 2024. So if Secretary Bashara comes out and says, hey, still in place until the end of 2024. So if Secretary Bashara comes out and says, hope the dogs, COVID's up and we're in a crisis and we need to reinstitute the emergency use authorization and, COVID's still ongoing, then we're back in. So he has total control over this. And so here's my thing. We now know remdesivir is still being given in the hospital. Right. Yeah. Why? We know the amount of damage and death, the multi-organ failure that it causes. Gots to go. It has got to go. Excuse me for getting a little slang there. The countermeasure that is being used, the FLCC Alliance, the frontline physicians and their alliance came out, and they did a great expose where they talk about how the vaccine, its use, the mRNA that's being used there. There's a lot of things that are going on there, but it's not safe. It's not effective. We know that from what we saw, just from coming out. They said it was the vaccine was 90% effective, and really it was 30% effective, and everybody has to get their boosters over and over and over again. But we see that there is a lot of damage that can be done from that lethal spike protein that's on the end, and in order to replicate it, they had to use the E. coli. Well, on the edge of those are endotoxins. They break into the system. I mean, you've got like a perfect storm going on here. You've got people who are debilitated. You've got people who are having effects months after months after months. There are people who are still having effects of cytokine storm from the vaccine. We know it didn't stay in the deltoid. That spike protein went into the testes, the ovaries, the brain. It went everywhere. And so we have to get those vaccines pulled. And so that was a jumping off point for us. I said, well, here's the deal. The former Fed's Freedom Foundation, they're across the nation. They're working to pull the vaccines. They're working to get investigations into remdesivir in the hospitals throughout the states. We need to stand up. We need to continue to push for action, because if we don't have bodily autonomy, then the next time the disease X comes, which the World Economic Forum talked about that in Davos, right? Mm-hmm. The next one that comes around, they've got a precedent now.
Yeah.
They're just.
Well, and I want to make the point real quick, Mick. All of that was only possible because of that EUA, because that allowed them to produce these drugs, go around the entire safety system, whatever we would call the safety system. I don't think it was very safe in the first place. That's the only reason why those things are still around. And how they even got through was because of that emergency use authorization.
That's it. That's
well,
exactly.
but I'm gonna even just go a different direction on the same topic. One of the things that we found in Common Core that ended up putting Common Core into the system was all of these backdoor deals and memorandums of what did they call them? It's a memorandum of understanding. That's what it is. An MOU, a memorandum of understanding that these people would sign together. These bureaucratic agencies would sign together. Well, we have a memorandum of understanding that we're going to do this, and then you'll help us do this, and we'll help us do this. People really legitimately, I think, don't understand. I mean, they get irritated at conservatives and say, well, conservatives are just mean, blah, blah, blah. Well, mainly we want government limited. And the reason why we want government limited is because of what you're talking about, what I'm talking about with what we saw with Common Core. These extra governmental agencies create laws, create rules, create all these things that we somehow are tyrannically forced to do, sometimes that we don't even know about until we end up being in a situation like I was with my mom, right? You just don't even know. And I think people need to understand, especially the kind of middle of the road people who are like, oh, I don't really care about this or that or the other thing. What you should care about is you should care about expansion of government. That's what you should care about, because the bigger government gets, the smaller we become, because the more they can control us. So when you get to a point, I think Julie is on again this morning, and Julia had said something, and you might remind me in the chat, Jules. She'd said something, we're at the tipping point where there are actually more people employed by government now in the United States than there actually are not employed. And I may be wrong about that, but it's somewhere close.
Well,
And
I'll tell you the total number here real quick, Jenny.
okay.
And since I just interrupted you, I want to make another point. All these other agencies, all these people, they're not elected. They're not elected
Correct.
by us. They don't work for us. They're completely unaccountable. There's no way for us to have any kind of real action against them. Sorry.
Right. It's like Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the bureaucracy is so large. Good luck finding a person. Right. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean,
or the censorship.
Yeah. And it's
or the censorship. Yeah.
It's so easy when bureaucracies get large to get lost in the system. And again, I think that anybody who just thinks rationally should understand we've got to limit government, but we also have to limit bureaucracy. In your case, you worked for a big hospital that had a big board. Oftentimes, I have a friend who resigned from his board position at a very large hospital because of the fact that the board had even gotten completely out of control. Here's what Julia says. More than half are getting income from government, either employed or welfare or in some way. Well, if that's the case, then we don't even have a free exercise of anything at that point, because anything that we do basically is paid for by the government. That's the big problem that we have. But what I was going to say about these big boards is that he left a big board because of the fact that the boards were out of control. He couldn't even bring the board into a common sense position on much of anything, because all it has to do with is what? Money.
Mm-hmm.
Money.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And I don't understand why medical freedom is such a hot potato issue. I'll be honest with you. It really should be a no-brainer to me. Every state, especially ours, that is supposedly a super majority of Republicans, should already have seen the evidence of this gene therapy countermeasure and pulled it off the market. There should have already been an outcry, but I just want to mention, because now that we've had the forum, we pull this information. The big thing we wanted to do was we wanted to provide information, but we wanted to provide people a plan, because now we're moving on to having Senate hearings and House hearings, and we're bringing those experts back. We're bringing back Peter McCullough, we're bringing back Dr. Lindsay, and we're bringing back, Dr. I don't think he's a doctor, excuse me, but McKernan. And we're going to bring that information to the legislators to say, this is what the evidence is. Hardcore evidence, not opinion, not anybody pontificating about whatever.
Right.
And this is what needs to be done. And then, bills have already been killed in the committees that were good bills that talked about prohibiting mandates. Well, that's a shame that that's happening. But we need to still speak out about this. And then once we have those hearings, then we plan on dropping a brief from a law group that is working in Florida, Texas, South Carolina, Louisiana, and Oklahoma to say, start investigations. This is the evidence, and these are the people who have been affected, and there are people in Oklahoma who have been affected, but there are more out there. So I don't want to use your platform just to kind of make a commercial here, but if there is anybody,
please do. I'll bill you later.
Okay, great. Yes, please do. But if there is anyone who was part of that hospital a situation and you're a healthcare worker and you saw something that was done that was unconstitutional, or you're like, that doesn't sit right with me, because I know there were a lot of nurses who were concerned about what was going on in the hospital. If you're vaccine injured, if you know somebody who's vaccine injured, if you yourself have been impacted by the COVID mandates in a negative way, please contact me at micmeow@proton.me. Just email me. I'll give you my email address, micmeow@proton.me. Email me and let me know so that we can connect, because we're going to be pulling that brief for investigation. We're getting voices together, and then we're going to continue on from there as well.
Hold on, Mick, I'm writing.
Well, I think that's what we have to have these people continue to come forward, and we've got to have some type of legislator that's going to be bold enough to, and actually just open-minded enough to look at it and say, yeah, here's actual science. I was told this, but in the beginning with all that stuff, we were never shown any kind of evidence. I mean, heck, Mick, you look at the insert to the tests themselves, the inserts half the time they were blank, or the inserts were blank to the vaccines. Or like I did a deep dive on just the test insert that they were using at our local school, and how it could be triggered by cough drops. It could be triggered by blood. It could be triggered by Afrin. I mean, it had a whole list. There's an entire, there's an entire appendix of 50 different things that would make that test positive for COVID. And they had them all listed out there. They had every single virus, every single bacteria, and literally anything that you were sick with, and any kind of over-the-counter little I mean, they had every little drug, every little thing you could take. All of them would make it a positive. And yes, I showed that to the local school administrators and the officials and the school board members. They just laughed at me. I mean, literally laughed at me. I said, you're locking these kids down based on a test that's not even accurate. Here's it tells you right here, all these things can make it inaccurate.
That's right. And you brought up a very good point. One of the speakers, Dr. Renata Moon, she brought an insert that was an unopened box from the vaccine. And she opened it up, and it says on there, intentionally blank. Wow. So that's unreal.
It literally says intentionally blank.
Wow.
Intentionally blank.
Well, and I want to make the point also, Mick, and just give praise and thank God that these people have stayed the course, because in the beginning, all those frontline doctors, I mean, there was 23,000 of them that spoke out early in COVID, even before the vaccines. Any local doctors or chiropractors or anybody that kind of spoke out against that, they were all completely demonized, I mean, just villainized, and just across the board, and shame on the major media and just all the people and the organizations, like from the top down, these administrators that supported going after and just demonizing all these people. So I thank God for people like Dr. McCullough. I mean, there's so many of them that have just stayed the course, said, hey, you guys are wrong. Here's the actual science. So, there are, as corrupt as this entire medical system is, there are good doctors, and thank God there are good doctors that are on our side. And I'm not saying like Christian conservatives, I'm saying humans, like on humanity's side, that want to just see the best in people and treat people to become healthy and cure them, not just treat them to, manage their death so they can make money. So thank God for people like you, Mick, also that's continuing this fight here locally and bringing that continuously, because if we don't get in front of this legislature and have them, make laws and realize they can't just use some type of emergency and lock us down and do whatever they want, and mandate whatever they want. If we don't do that, they're going to continue to do that. It's just like anything that is progressive. They're just going to make it worse and worse and worse, until you have no way out.
Well, you know, something that hit me while you were talking, both of you, Mick, you talked about how if you spoke out, they got on to you, and we know, and Michael was talking about how when doctors were speaking out, they just get villainized and told to shut up. Well, we've talked just recently, well, even last Wednesday or this Wednesday, we talked about parents who came forward to complain about dirty books, get villainized. They become the problem, not the people who are pushing the inappropriate books. And it just hit me as we were talking about this. How 1984 is that?
Yeah.
Oh,
How communist is
Yeah.
that? So we literally have had our kids primarily in public schools. And we have them on media now since about, what was it, 2014, I guess, phones became, all the rage. So between technology and what they've been pushing in public schools, we basically have a population now that says, we believe you, oh government. We believe you, oh medical system. We're gonna idolize and bow
Yeah.
down and worship these systems and believe what these people say. And it's tyranny. It's simple tyranny. And the worst part about it is people have been conditioned to believe that we're tyrannical because we're pushing freedom.
yeah.
So
That's
think how bad we are. Even in Oklahoma, oh my gosh, you look at the dark money problem that we have in Oklahoma, how we get people to vote by mailers that talk about things that just elicit emotion and half the times aren't even true,
Yeah.
right? So we literally, this whole system has now gotten to the point where I don't know that I can't say we're not a communist country. I can't say
Yeah.
that we're not a communist state. And the reason why is because people have been trained to do exactly what you guys are talking about. And that is worship the people who want to tell them what to do.
right.
Yeah. You're right, Jenny.
Absolutely. When you start shutting people down, when you start deplatforming people, when you start silencing people and saying you no longer have the right to speak because it goes against the narrative, when you're not allowed to question science, then yeah, you're in a Marxist communist situation. And people need to realize that has seeped in and soaked in, and people are conditioned. I had so many people who came to me and said, Mick, I really feel coerced into taking this vaccine, but I guess I better. No,
when you
thank
feel
you.
coerced, you say no.
Yes, that's
Well,
what I said. I said, no, I'm
Mick,
not doing it.
I know people that got their kids vaccinated so they could skip the quarantining at the schools.
I know people who vaccinated their kids to keep them from being bullied by other kids.
Oh,
Yeah,
gracious.
So I want you to tell me now, explain to me, because if we want to have this discussion, let's make a discussion. Those of you who are watching out there and want to disagree with me that this is not a communist country and we don't live in the People's Republic of Oklahoma, please tell me how not. I just want to know how not.
Yeah.
Explain your position.
Yeah. Right.
Jenny, I get to go on my phone and watch my reality TV and YouTube and stuff. I mean, I'm pretty free.
Oh, I guess that's true. What was that? And you get to buy your tickets to the Thunder game.
Yeah,
right?
and I can still go to soccer
and go
practice.
to OU football and OSU football.
Yeah.
And
as long as you're vaccinated and have your vaccine passport card.
For sure.
I mean, did you hear what the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, came out and was praising because the EU came out with their health digital ID on their phone, which was the vaccine passport. And we had that on the East Coast, the West Coast. I know we didn't have it in Oklahoma, but Louisiana even had that. In New Orleans, you couldn't go in to eat unless you had your little vaccine passport card. So, that's a control. And now Tedros is saying that digital health ID is going to be international. It's going to have your health records. It's going to have your mental health records.
Yeah.
It's going to have your vaccines. So all they have to do is go on your phone, and who's going to see that? The government's going to see that. Private public relations are going to see that. Corporations that come together, wherever you go, people are going to have all your information. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Control.
Yeah.
Control.
Well,
What's
and
a better
here's the
way?
thing, because I was thinking about this, because I know people are out there and they'll say, well, why would the state do that to us? Well, why would the federal government even get involved in the UN? Why would we do all of these things? Money and power. And that's it. That's it. Those are the only two reasons. If you don't think people do things for money and power, you're an idiot. And I won't even have a conversation with you.
That's right. Control. It is all about control, to make you and I a commodity.
Well, so why do you suppose we ended up having so much of that stuff happen in Oklahoma? And yet, by the way, our very conservative government took crap tons of COVID money.
Yep.
The state administration held out both hands and just said,
Schools.
pile it in here, pile it on.
Yep.
Pile it on. We want that money. And then what did the money have? Strings. And then all of a sudden we're having to do this or that behind closed doors because they don't want it out, right? But that behind closed doors, they're going to fill in X, Y, and Z that were the precursors for being able to get that money in the first place. It is the most rotten, disgusting, horrifying, vomitous situation ever. But people, until they decide they want to educate themselves, this thing is going to work like a charm because they've been indoctrinated to believe, the state. Our language, like in 1984, remember 1984, they changed the language, they changed the meanings of things. Mick, you and I are scientists. So what does the word science mean anymore? Huh?
Exactly.
Believe the science.
Yeah.
Believe the science.
Yeah, science used to like what's funny, like you look at the scientific method that Albert Pop, I think his name was Albert Pop, he's kind of the guy that created that. It was developed to prove the theory wrong.
Correct.
It wasn't to go balls out, yes, this is correct 100%. It was to say, hey, this guy's put this forward, we're going to prove that it's wrong. And if we can't prove that it's wrong, okay, then it's got some merit. It's all been turned completely.
And then we say
around.
it's a theory. So don't forget, that's the next step. Just because if we can't prove it wrong, we don't say that's automatically right. We then say, well, this is a theory and it's an acceptable theory because we weren't able to prove it wrong. But that's not the way science works anymore. Yeah. Right now, the way science works is everything that we say, if we're a scientist, is right. That's what science is right now.
Well, yeah. And you're not allowed to question the science, right? You're not allowed to question Mr. Science, Dr. Fauci. Not allowed to. Yeah. That's off limits.
Arrest Fauci.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
As our YouTube channel gets hacked.
Criminal.
Yeah.
That's okay. I don't care. I'm all happy with that. Well, Mick, I want you to, because we're at an hour and 7. It seems like a minute though, talking about this. When you had your rally, what were you telling or suggesting people to do if they're concerned about this issue? What can we tell people to do? How can they kind of take back control here?
So the first thing that they can do is they can get in touch with myself, or they can get in touch with the organization that I am working with, which is the former Feds group Freedom Foundation.
Explain that to me. What is that?
So they are basically a group of people, but they are a 501c3, and they are composed of survivors, victims, and families of victims who really suffered a lot of the grievous harm that was done as the result of the public health policies, namely the administration of remdesivir Veklury, and then the gene therapy countermeasures. And what they're doing is they are volunteers. They go across the nation, and what they're doing is they're getting involved with their legislators. They have initiatives to recall the vaccine.
Really?
It's called We the People 50, where they are having the initiative. They're giving it to the attorney generals and saying, here is the evidence, which is part of what we're doing in our Senate and House hearings. We are going to the legislators and saying, here is the evidence, here is the information, back us, and let's, have the attorney general, number one, pull those off the market, the COVID vaccine, which is the gene therapy countermeasure, and start the investigations into the hospitals where they're still giving remdesivir, and why, and what was being done, what happened to those people, because we know that the CARES Act money, a portion of that went to the hospitals, and that's what Medicare used. If those people were COVID positive, they were given remdesivir. Well, they automatically, Medicare gave them $8,000. I know it was varied among states. And then if they died with COVID or they were intubated, they got more money. If they died with COVID, they got a 20% extra of money's incentive, I'm calling it, on top of that bill. So
well, wasn't it too, if they put them on a respirator, they got some kind of money too? Wasn't that
if they were intubated, they got more money. If they got remdesivir, they got money. If they died with a COVID diagnosis, they got a 20% incentive on top of that bill. So we need to investigate all of that. We need to look into that. What hospitals got that, and why were they giving remdesivir? I mean, I know there were people who were given remdesivir and it was like a cookie cutter. They just, it was the same dose of steroid, the same dose of remdesivir. I mean, there was no accounting for weight or age or any kind of a difference between male or female. No.
How do you do that with a medication?
Right.
My gosh, I even have to dose my sheep according to their weight.
Exactly. And so what we're doing, Jenny, is we're asking people to contact us. Let's get witness affidavits. Have people come to the Capitol on March the 26th. We had some brave legislators. I want to recognize Representative Danny Williams, Senator David Bullard, and Senator Shane Jett, who are, helping us in getting these hearings forward. Join with us in putting their names to this brief, so that we can bring that information forward to the AG. Connect with the Oklahomans for Health and Parental Rights, or other organizations who are fighting for medical freedom. Go to our Facebook page with Liberty and Justice for All Forum and join us in this fight, because it's not about who you are, or your political affiliation, or your religious association, or if you're male or female. It doesn't matter. COVID didn't discriminate. It hit everybody, whether they were impacted from the mismanagement of the mandates, locking children out of schools, making people wear masks 24/7, separating people from their loved ones, giving them remdesivir, forcing them to take a countermeasure, which was, unsafe, and we know has done a lot of damage now. So that's what we're asking people to do, is to join us in the fight, because we're hitting it from every angle that we can.
Well, and I think I'm going to point out another thing that I'm fairly certain you'll agree with me on.
Yeah.
People are going to have to learn to say no. I don't know where we ended up losing that. The only thing I can think of is back to what we were talking about with the communist uh, level indoctrination of people. We've just been indoctrinated to go, okay, whatever you say. And it's mean to say no. It's not mean to say no. And then the other side of it is people say, well, I don't know anything about this, and I don't feel like I can say anything because I don't know anything about this. If you don't feel like it's right for you, you don't have to provide a 27-page medical text showing explanation of why. You just say, this isn't right for me, I'm not going to do that, but thank you. Or no, I'm not going to do that. I don't understand. We've got to start getting people to rediscover their spine.
Yeah. And realize that they do have the power. They have the power to say no. I can tell you, Jenny, when I turned in my religious exemption, because I was the only one in my unit who did not take the vaccine. I said,
Mick,
no,
that's terrible.
They made me,
Good for you, Mick, but wow.
submit it 4 times, And every time they came back with question. I actually had to have a pastor help me write and no lie, I'm not kidding. It was basically like a theological dissertation, 4 pages practically, of why I will not take a experimental so-called vaccine put in my arm that you don't have long-term data on. No, I won't do it.
So I want to point up something after you just said that too. So we in Oklahoma have a military exemption for vaccines, correct?
Yes.
So now, does that only apply to the state, or does that apply to private businesses?
Well, from what I understand, it applies to the state, but there was a bill that would stop employers from mandating, and that got killed in committee. But that's like the second or third time.
That's the way I understand it too. But here's the point. If we're going to have a law, and I know this is different for you because you were employed by a private organization, you weren't employed by the state.
Right.
But I can't tell you the number of times, and Michael and I have talked about this on the show probably 100 times at this point in time. We're coming up on our year anniversary of the show. I'm sure we've talked about it 100 times, where the state even says, you have to do this. And there's a law that says that you don't have to do that. But then there's no teeth in the law that says that you don't have to do this. And so then the state gets to go, well, there's no teeth in it, and we'll do whatever we want. So I don't know how we make people, until football isn't important anymore, until kids soccer isn't important anymore, until parents start paying attention to their kids, until people start paying attention to their own health care, until people actually start taking responsibility for themselves and seeing themselves as autonomous individuals and not a cog in a machine, we're never going to get anywhere. We've got to have people rediscover their backbones and understand what it means to have individual autonomy, or we're going to be 100% communist.
That's it. And that's why I keep saying, we are the cure in 24 because we have that power. If we stood together, and I'll be honest with you, look, I love my nursing sisters and brothers, right? I love healthcare. I am still a big advocate for it because there is a need for people to have someone to help them when they are sick. And, and when you're dying, you shouldn't die alone. But if we would have locked arms as the AMA and the ANA, American Nursing Association, and the American Medical Association, what kind of force would that have been? But see, there's too much wokeism in there. They drank the Kool-Aid, and the AMA just was like, well, I don't want to get in trouble, so we'll follow this and do what we're told. We've got to stop that. We have got to get those professionals to realize that person put their life in your hands, and that was a betrayal. It was a betrayal to not allow them to have their family members, to not allow them to have their phones sometimes with them. They were taking people's phones away. Why? So you can't connect to the outside, so you can isolate them?
Well, that's funny because I recently had a situation that I was in where I wasn't allowed to have anybody be with me or speak on my behalf or have any of my personal notes or materials. So I think people who are tyrannists,
Yeah.
I'm going to make up that word. A tyrannist
I like
is somebody who
Tyrannist.
practices tyranny.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to use it. I'm going with it.
And that, hey, Jenny, and that was at the hands of some like unelected state people, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Unaccountable, unelected, non-transparent,
appointed
state. Yeah.
Yeah.
State.
Same as in the hospital. They're not elected.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's the truth.
Well, we've got to, I mean, I think the best thing that we can do is to have somebody like you, Mick, who is, you know, you've been in this industry. You understand the industry. You saw this stuff firsthand. It's not like you're making it up or reading it out of a book. You've been there, done that for, you know, to use the vernacular of the time. You've been there, done that. I think for you to stand up and talk about this, and I'm sorry that you've lost your job because you were probably a phenomenal nurse, and it's a real loss to, you know, people not to have you there. But I think people need to listen to learn to listen to people other than those that have been indoctrinated to them as authorities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Maybe what we should do, Michael, is you and I should give Mick our authority.
Yeah. Let's just hand it over.
Yeah, there you go. You're an authority now.
Okay, I'll vote yes. Well, for me,
I'll take it.
Just to close out, Jane, something I want to say is looking at all this. I mean, the government has, I mean, just to kind of show you where their power is gone and what thought process. I mean, ultimately, it's all about money. The entire industry is all about money. The entire medical industry, the insurance industry, it's all about money and control, yes. But if it was truly about health and healthcare, you know, they have all these words, they have all these buzzwords that sound so good, you know, 2 weeks to stop the spread, all the BS, you know, healthcare, you know, whatever, all this stuff. If the government really cared, they would clean up the food supply. They'd get all the chemicals out of all the food supply. They'd get all the chemicals out of big agra. They'd teach people about nutrition. They'd get the stuff out of the water. I mean, if they really cared, they know that all those things, they're all allowed to happen because that creates a perpetual state of medical need, which creates a state of constant treatment for the rest of your life. So if they really cared, just one example. Okay, I'll give you two quick examples. You know, like your thyroid is a pretty important organ in your body. And your thyroid, you know, actually operates. It needs some pretty serious amount of iodine, good iodine. Yeah. You know, and in the past, our government, they put iodine in the food. Iodine used to be in bread. Iodine was in, well, it's still kind of in salt, not really in the right form. But anyway, besides all that, they wanted people to have iodine because it was critical to your health. Iodine's been stripped out of everything. You know what they put in? Bromine. You know, if you look at the periodic chart, that's part of the halogen group of elements. Well, bromine is damaging to you, just like fluorine and chlorine and all the rest of them. Well, why would
halogen
they do
is good for you?
Yeah. Why would they do something like that? You look at, let's say, like sodium nitrate. They know sodium nitrate is a literal carcinogen. It causes cancer. They know that. It's banned in so many other countries. They put it in our food to keep the meat pink. You know, it's in all, it's a curing agent. It's in all, like your bacon, all your lunch meats, all your stuff. They know it causes cancer. Know it 100%. It causes cancer. It's a carcinogen.
Also causes things to blow up.
Yeah. If they care. Yeah. If they care, they would remove
saying.
those things. We'd have food laws. We'd have food purity laws. We'd take all the chemicals out of all the stuff, out of all the shampoos, all the things we put on our body, all the things we smell. But no, that's not the case. So that's my rant. The government does not care. It's about money and power. They do not care about our health. They do not care about us being prosperous, independent, free, healthy, having liberty, having happiness. Has nothing to do with any of that. It's 100% what you said, Jenny. It's about control and power and money. That's what it comes down
And
to.
here's the thing that I was thinking about as you were talking about, all of the food stuff that goes in there. And you think about it, we have a Department of Ag, right? We have a state Department of Ag. We have a federal Department of Ag. They were the ones that created this pyramid with bread on the bottom.
Yeah.
Bread.
Yeah.
On the bottom of the
one
food
of the
pyramid.
worst things you can have.
6 to 11 servings of bread and pasta. I mean, hello hips.
Yeah. Well, we could go on. I mean, literally,
But what
I've studied this for a long time. But anyway, we go on forever. But that's just my.
Well, what I was going to say was, so think about it. So they make this pyramid, right? The Department of Ag does. Well, because the subsidized, we have to have wheat, right? We have to have wheat if it's at the bottom of the food pyramid. So now the government has to subsidize wheat farmers, right? So wheat farmers get money, and then all of their lobbyists turn around and give money back to the legislators, who then create more subsidies for the farmer.
Same with farm.
It's just all it does is a circle. It's there's no getting out of it, and it's all about money and what I can get out of it for myself. It doesn't matter anything about whether somebody's going to get sick or not. If you are going to give me money, then I'll turn around and scratch your back, and then it just goes, and the people get cut out of it, because it's not about happiness, like you said, or people, or it's not about any of that. It's what I can get and how much money I get.
Yeah.
Right. Well, just like in pharmacy and the hospital, those are the two biggest lobbyists of the, legislators out there. They just hand money, which is, why we have so many issues with, pharmaceutical companies, and it's unreal
and why
how
you
much
can't
money
sue,
they hand over.
You can't sue a pharmacy for a vaccine.
Yeah.
Right. Because of the PrEP Act. And they put that in there. It's but we have got to stand up. We have got to recognize that we do have the ability to say no. And, we need to continue to move the ball forward. We need to continue to speak out for medical freedom. We need to continue to fight, because the next health crisis that's coming around the corner isn't going to be that far away. I mean, they're already forecasting for the end of 2024, 2025, right? Yep. I mean, they're already making those plans, and we're still trying to figure out about, COVID and the origins of COVID, because all of that has been hid and censored. So what we're saying is, in the state of Oklahoma, if we can get to the point where we get enough people to say enough is enough, and force the investigations, and go to the Attorney General and say, pull this off the market. Here's the evidence. It's right there for you. Get those people who say, well, my loved one died of COVID in the hospital. No, they died of the protocols that they were given, and being able to garner those people, then we can use our sovereign power to say, okay, either we get the legislation in there that has teeth, or we get the legislators who are going to put the legislation in there that has teeth in there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the trick. We've got to pay attention, because what ends up happening is legislators pass things and then say that they passed them. But then if you really go back and look at them, it doesn't do anything. It's an empty promise, essentially. All right. Well, we're going to have to get off of here for today, since we're coming up on an hour 30. But Mick, I can't tell you it's been a joy to meet you,
Yeah.
and it's just been over the last couple of years, and it's been I hope people look at you and say, hey, if she can do it, I can do it. And we're sorry that you lost your job and, all of that kind of stuff. But thank you for being a person who's willing to speak out.
Well, thank you so much. And, leaving nursing was a hard thing for me to do, but, I really believe that this is, going in this path of using my voice is the best thing that could be. And I am so grateful that you had me on your program. I look forward to talking to you all more. There'll be more information about the Senate and House hearings. Please go to our Facebook page with Liberty and Justice for All Forum, and you can also find the Conservative Continuum on Rumble and the blessednewstv.com.
Okay, you said all of those really fast, and I blank out when you say Facebook.
Sorry. I know, right?
Where are you on Rumble?
On Rumble, just look for the Conservative Continuum. Okay. And blessednewstv.com, the Conservative Continuum. And then our Facebook page.
blessednewstv.com.
Right.
TV.com. Sorry, I'm trying.
No, you're fine. And then Facebook is with Liberty and Justice for All Forum. And that's where we're doing all of our stuff for medical freedom.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, Mick, this country's for the people, by the people. And if we, the people, don't do something, like you and like this podcast and like other freedom fighters and these doctors that are staying the course and these experts and scientists that are speaking out, if we don't have them, if we don't have a little bit of some of that, then we will go into that complete tyrannical, communist, Marxist control state. So I'm so happy to have someone like you fighting for us. I appreciate everything you do, and just keep going, because we've got to have, it's not, I think sometimes, I was just talking to someone about this yesterday, and sometimes I think that we need massive groups of people, but sometimes the message can come through us, and that can work, just as well. If there's just a couple of us, someone's got to be there to take those arrows, to get it started, to get it going. We don't have to, maybe in the beginning, we don't have to have this massive support group of people behind us agreeing with us. The message will work through us the way that it's supposed to, in some capacity, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I look forward to talking to you all more and getting more information out there, and look for the hearings. March 26th should be the day. Yeah. Got my fingers and my eyeballs crossed.
March 26th.
March 26th at the state capitol, we'll have Senate and House joint hearings.
And that's joint Senate and House hearings on medical freedom?
Medical freedom. Yep. We're going to have our experts speak, and then we're going to drop our briefs, hopefully to the AG to request investigations.
Don't say drop your briefs.
Sorry, my bad. My bad.
I have too many boys in my house. It causes me
panic.
You're traumatized, Jenny.
I know. I am. Well, Mick, thanks you again. Please keep up with us. Text me information if I need to get it out. If we need to get it out on the podcast, we absolutely will. So just keep in touch with us.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mick.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was a great interview. Mick is quite a, we need more people to be Micks.
Yeah. Well, and I think it'll happen, Jenny. I mean, just like with me out of nowhere, now I'm hopefully a force for good.
Well, of course you're a force for good.
But I was
on
a
some
backseat.
days.
Well, you rewind. I was just a backseat guy trying to survive, get along, do what I can do, make no waves, just, go out, go to work, come home, play some golf, play with my kids, repeat every day. But now, it's time to step up and actually hold some people accountable and get our country back. That's for sure. But like I always say, I mean, we need to empower ourselves. You know, we're the ones that's responsible for our health.
Right.
If you're going to go eat McDonald's and Doritos and drink Cokes, that's your prerogative. You can do that. I shouldn't have to pay for it. I shouldn't have to pay for an irresponsible lifestyle with no nutrition, no health, and, you know, no exercise. If you're going to be lazy and do that, it shouldn't be my responsibility to chip in to a government to take care of you so you can do that. If you want to do that, you know, great, but you should have to suffer the consequence on your own if that's the case.
Yeah. Well, there's so many things that we could go into about, you know, the way we've allowed government to run our lives instead of us doing it ourselves. I mean, it's sad. It's sad to say, but we're at a really bad crossroads right now. And I think the only other thing that we really needed to do is encourage people before we get off of here and say, you know what, maybe you have family members that don't understand what we've talked about today. Maybe they have been propagandized, if you will, to believe that the state is right or that the doctor is right or at the, you know, whatever. Realize that you have your own brain.
Yeah.
Help your family members and your friends realize that they have their own brain, and you can help to retrain them out of their fog, their mental fog that they've been propagandized into. But you have to do it, and you have to believe that you can and that you should and that you're able to.
Yeah.
So, you know,
well, and go ahead.
No, that's it.
Well, I was just going to say, they only have that power because we give it to them.
Right.
Because we comply with all their orders. We just go along with all the things they say and do.
Yeah.
That go against who we are and why we were created and why this country was created, because we allow them to do that to us.
Yeah. That's true.
It's like your graphic, you know, if they stand up, the game is over.
Right. Yes. Yeah. But I mean, when you've trained people to be subservient, it's hard for them to see themselves as a person.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to see their own autonomy when they've been trained to be subservient. And I think that's what we're struggling with right now, is that retraining the brain. So
I agree.
All right. Well, it's always good to see you, Michael. Do you have any exciting plans for the weekend?
No, just a lot of work.
I know, I do too. And farm work. Lots of farm work.
I feel like farm work since I'm herding 5 kids.
Oh, all by yourself?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to say, that is a chore. That's way worse than herding cats. All right, Bud, it's been good to see you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I do want to say, before we get out of here, Kevin and Janelle Batts, Red River Media, have helped us create a documentary about dark money. And Kevin and I just finished up quite a bit of work on it yesterday. I think it's going to be ready soon. Please help all of these efforts that are happening, that we're doing to pass knowledge on to people, because what we've said is the same thing over and over again. We have to get people to understand these things so that they'll be willing to stand up so that we can stop these things. Yeah. If you can donate money to Red River Media, for example, or if you can donate money to Rope, please do that. I know a lot of people like to go to these rallies that come in. You know, Clay Clark, for example, sponsors a lot of rallies, brings a lot of people in. They don't work in our state. They're not trying to do things that are going to help our population. They're great, I guess, speakers, but you pay, a big chunk for that ticket, but then they get that money. And those of us who are really trying to help bring awareness to people in our own state aren't getting those kinds of funds. We don't get those ticket prices. So please think about that and help us by donating. We really need to have an advertising campaign to kick off this documentary, and we could use money to do that. And Red River Media TV could use money and you can they have a group now you can donate to their nonprofit, which is called Ellavium, Ellivium. So please think about doing that and help us here in our state help you. So there you go.
There we go.
All
Well,
right.
and every little bit matters, even if it's $5, $10, $8, $20. Just
It does.
Those things add up tremendously.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you again for being with us, and always good to talk to you, Michael. And we will see you next week. And I don't have my list to tell you who's on for Wednesday, so that's fairly embarrassing. But we'll have somebody good, I promise.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Sign up for our newsletter. You'll find out. All right. We will see you on Wednesday, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks.